Okay, so sorry. Okay, so I wanted to start off with, I know that it's a struggle for anyone who's new to a community, even if you're not new, because Diana, I think you've been Muslim for like decades now, right? Um, uh, for anyone who's like new to a community or coming from outside the community or wasn't born into it, it can be really difficult to try to work yourself into the community and get a sense of like not really family, but like feel like you're part of the community. I wanted to hear about what you guys have to say about what behaviors in the Muslim communities that you've engaged with over the years have helped or hindered the sense of community building for converts. Diana, we can start with you.
Okay. Salam alaikum. I've been Muslim for quite a while now, and I live in a place where there are not very many Muslims. So my ability to get in a community is kind of limited by my location. So I do a lot of internet community, but I tried for a while to get into the community that was nearest to me, which was a couple hours away up in Denver area. And some of the challenges were just language barrier sometimes, people um, not speaking English, or you're not understanding what the program's about or anything because it's not available in English. That was definitely one. Another one is just feeling like you're welcome at the center, but you're not welcome in the rest of their lives. Like like, hey, we're happy to see you at the center, but we're never going to invite you to our birthday party or anything, or socialize with you just normally because you're not from our cultural background, or it just doesn't occur to us for whatever reason. So, I definitely remember noticing that. But so just, I think converts sometimes they lost some of their social connections, and so they may be looking to build some of those social connections. And so I think just being open to including converts in that way.
That's good. Yusuf or Joe, do you have anything to add?
I mean, I kind of took notes and something along the lines of what Sister Diana was saying, that like sometimes, converting to Islam, we tend to lose a lot of our social connections anyway, right? So sometimes we get backlash from our family. Sometimes we get backlash from our community or our extended family or our friends. And coming to Islam, it may not just be new to our friends, but it's also new to us too. So I think just realizing, I think one of the notes that I put here was, welcoming reverts with open arms and an open mind, as you would like to be welcomed if you were in their position. I think a lot of people tend to lack putting themselves in someone else's shoes, especially someone that is new or just a convert to Islam. I think if more people were to just kind of, um, I guess, just put their themselves in that position, like, okay, if I were in a new religion, new community, no friends, families probably not agreeing with your move or anything. So um, just being welcoming, not just with open arms, but an open mind as well. We all converts come from different backgrounds, as Muslims do. We all come from different backgrounds. That was it.
Thank you for sharing, Joe. Mary.
Alaikum, and yeah, definitely I feel so blessed that I've never, since I started wearing the hijab, I've never faced any direct examples of Islamophobia, out in the world. In this area, I think there's a lot of Muslims, and alhamdulillah, I've never experienced any Islamophobia from outsiders, but there was definitely days where Muslims made me want to take my hijab off because as a convert, sometimes you're so bombarded. And I know that we as Muslims, we get so excited when we see converts, because when somebody converts to our faith, it validates our faith. Somebody chose this faith. But that doesn't mean that you can be insensitive or ask personal questions. So, I definitely feel like I have a whole list of disrespectful and very personal questions I'm asked just, out and about in the world when you're trying to do your shopping at the grocery store. Somebody comes up to you and says, tell me your conversion story. And, it's, of course, someone's conversion story is usually a really long, personal and messy story. People ask me, how does your family feel? That, of course, that's very sensitive. That's something that was probably a difficult journey for most converts. So it's not something I want to talk about, in an Uber or in the grocery store. But so thank you, Sister Hedia, for saying that we should be sensitive of that.
You're welcome. I'm sorry it needed to be said.
Alhamdulillah, I do want to share on a positive note that the best thing a sister ever did when she did want to get to know me and get to know my conversion story, she actually just invited me into her house so that we could sit and have tea together and have a nice long discussion. That was a much better way to, get to hear why somebody converted to Islam, because we had time, we were able to get to know each other versus just, running up to someone at the masjid or at the grocery store and saying, where are you from? Are you a convert? Tell me your story. So I do want to share that, especially in a time where converts, feel so lonely, a better way to get to know them would be to actually invite them to your house or something to support them rather than just asking them these questions to validate your own faith.
I feel that. I feel like a lot of times when I've seen people ask those kinds of questions to converts who they've just met, I'm like, I feel like this is exploitative. Like, you don't have a right to ask people such personal things. The first thing you say to someone you just met is not like, tell me about the most life-changing decision you ever made, the whole story of it.
And the reality also is that as Muslims, all of us basically have a conversion story. All of us as adults have to decide, do we want to practice this faith? It doesn't, even if you're born into Islam, it doesn't mean that you didn't make a decision one day that I want to fast, I want to pray, I want to wear the hijab. So, it's not just converts who have a conversion story. We all make that decision.
Related to asking questions, or I think there are a lot of assumptions that people make about converts that, people assume that they have, and not everybody does this, right? But you will run into, I'm pretty sure every convert has run into someone where they assume that they had a very sinful past, right? That they were very promiscuous or that they did all kinds of things because they weren't Muslim, right? So they make weird assumptions and kind of take that into the way that they interact with you. And the another thing is that, like, no matter how long you've been a convert, there are always people who will treat you like you're like a 10-year-old Muslim who's just, at the very beginning of the journey, even if you've been Muslim longer than they've been alive, so so it's just the assumptions, treat them like a normal person. I mean, most of us interact with non-Muslims all day, every day. And so, even if it shouldn't be drastically different than when you're in a Muslim circle, you just treat them like a human being and be careful about making assumptions, I guess.
That was great. Thank you, guys. So we got a comment from Mariam Tawfiq saying, I feel like a lot of us ask converts questions to validate why we are Muslim, just like how Mary mentioned. I think that is probably true. And Zainab's comment afterwards is true too, that, it's not helpful for us to actually seek external validation. Like, someone's conversion story shouldn't really make like a huge impact on your personal faith. Also, it's still rude to ask.
And I also want to add that just go on YouTube. There's a bajillion conversion stories. If you're having a low day where you really feel you could use some validation, just go on YouTube. You can find a million conversion stories that will help you out.
That is also great. I mean, okay, so you guys have talked about issues you faced with building a sense of community, and really I think it comes down to building friendships within like a masjid community, because that's what really gets you invited to places. And it's hard to do that in a masjid because people aren't there. I mean, I don't even know that people are there more than once a week, or once a week, even if that. And people don't seem to make a lot of an effort to get to know new people at the masjid, which is what we really should be trying to do, is welcoming people who are new to the space. So in your experiences, has there been anything that happened within your masjid community? Mary, I know you mentioned like someone coming to your house and having tea with you to discuss personal things. Is there anything that you experienced that you felt really aided in community building, or have your experiences generally been kind of negative?
that really aided.
Yeah. Like
So I
anything that made you
remember,
feel welcome.
so I think for myself, I can only speak for myself, of course, but I remember, of course, going to like a few Masjid and people asking me if I was lost. You know, people asking me like, well, what are you doing here? That program's already finished, or and it's just like it's, and I'm sure it's happened to multiple converts, right? Where you walk in and people think that you're just there to visit, or you're there not knowing what the actual program is, or and you don't know what's actually going on. But no, I don't think anyone that is not of like Muslim descent uh, voluntarily goes to like sit at random Muslim lectures. You know, I don't know. Personally, I haven't seen that. So I have been approached on multiple occasions at different mosques. You know, like, hey, are you lost? What are you doing here? You know, the program's over. Like hovering over me, like, okay, are you still gonna stay here? And I try to look past that, but I think sometimes when it happens to myself multiple times at different locations, and then I share my story with other people of the community, and then they say, you know, well, this happens all the time. This happens all the time. It kind of hurts to hear, but then at the same time, going back to your question, like what would aid us? I think a big aid, you know, I think a lot of us have uncles or aunts or moms and fathers that have some cultural backward tendencies, right? And I think a lot of, just like Islam, just like knowledge and akhlaq, a lot of that starts at home. And a lot of the responsibility, as you know, as much as it is on our parents, on our uncles, on our aunts, on the elders of the community, another responsibility is ours as well, as the young people who know or have been exposed to more. Whereas our cultures are like one dimensional. You know, it's this is what go. This is how, you know, whatever we say goes. And sometimes that attitude or that perspective that whatever we say goes can also bleed into the relationship with converts sometimes. And I think sometimes people just think, like Sister Diana said, you know, you're either an outsider, completely an outsider, like, oh, he's never even been to a mosque, or it's like, okay, well, maybe you've been here before, but are you lost? You know, like, what are you really doing here? And I think starting at home probably would help us converts a lot.
In my experience, one thing that helped me a lot when I was a new convert and I was living in, I live in a place where there aren't very many Muslims. Someone actually invited me to come and stay with them for, a week or so during the month of Ramadan, and, live with their family so I could experience what the month of Ramadan was like for a Muslim family, and go to the masjid with them and meet people. They would introduce me to people because I wasn't just walking in there by myself as a complete stranger. And it made it feel really nice, right? Like I felt like I got to see what they did at home, which, like, I have no clue what Muslims do at home during the month of Ramadan, right? Because I live it's just me. What do you do? So that was very interesting. It was cool to see, and that felt very welcoming. So that was one thing that I remember that was really good that somebody had done.
That's nice. Mary, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I want to echo what Diana said. The same thing for me. We think of like Ramadan and Eid as this like such a festive time that we get together with our family, but converts, of course, don't have those nostalgic feelings, and they don't have that probably family structure to celebrate with. So the best thing that ever happened to me is there was one or two sisters who actually did invite me into their homes during Ramadan so that I could stay overnight and have suhoor with them, and not be waking up early eating by myself. And people who have been with me on Eid to celebrate, that was such a supportive thing to have those people celebrate with you, for people who don't have the family structure around Islamic holidays and traditions.
And that might work for someone who's not a convert too, but just doesn't have family around,
Mhm.
I feel like that's like the idea of like inviting someone over for Thanksgiving when you know that they can't go back home because they're stuck at school, which like everyone who has dormed can appreciate that, when you're dorming somewhere far away and you can't justify the plane ticket home for Thanksgiving. Like,
And sometimes, my bad, just to add on to that, I kind of was just looking over my notes. I think making like a conscious effort, to show admiration for someone new to the religion in the community, by continually making them feel included, not to just events, but like, for example, we're talking about Ramadan, right? There's many Muslims, let alone converts, but many Muslims that don't even know the criteria to, okay, how does Ramadan come about? Or what actually starts Ramadan, and what is Ramadan? And I think just little things like, hey, hey, a few days from now it's Ramadan. Hey, do you have anyone to close your fast with? Hey, do you have anyone to spend your Eid with? Because I know, for example, for myself, there's been plenty of Eids that I don't spend with anybody. I might go to the mosque during the day or the morning, and then I come back and I don't necessarily know what to do. Things like that, just making that conscious effort of like promoting brotherhood and sisterhood in Islam.
that was super helpful. Thank you. So I think these were all great comments. I have a question that I've been thinking about for a while. I think, Diana, you may have posted this in the Facebook group we're in, or it might have been someone else and I'm misremembering. But I wanted to ask you guys how your experience of Ramadan has been different since COVID, since everybody is at home now. Do you guys feel like, because I know the like one of the biggest issues, the thing that we're talking about here, is like a lack of community. And the reason that so many born Muslims look forward to Ramadan is definitely not the fasting. It's the sense of community. It's getting to go out to suhoor with your friends at IHOP at 3 a.m. and seeing everyone at the Masjid multiple times during the month. Now that like most of us, well, hopefully nobody's going to the Masjid right now, but last year we definitely didn't, and this year we probably still won't be able to. Do you feel like COVID has been kind of equalizing for you guys, or even more isolating?
For me, it was kind of saying, I think people got a window into what Ramadan's like for a convert, right? I mean, because really it was zero change for me. Nothing was different. I just get up, go to work, come home. It's just a completely normal thing. So the only thing that was different, last year was that I had to work from home because my workplace was shut down. But in terms of what the month of Ramadan looked like, absolutely nothing changed. And it was very interesting to hear people, really lamenting how much sorrow they felt about how different everything was. And I was like, well, but this is not that different for me. So for some people, it's not very different. Yeah.
And
I would probably agree. Yeah. Sorry, Mary.
Go ahead, Brother Yusuf.
Oh no, I was just agreeing. Like, yeah, that nothing's changed. Most of us are fasting alone, or we may have a friend, right? Like a token friend. Like, yeah, I'll fast with you. But in reality, that'll be a few days. It won't last that long. It's nothing's really changed. It's been an equalizer, as you say.
I just wanted to say also, there's probably a lot of people out there who are finding Islam or searching for Islam, and then they're not able to go to the masjid and meet people and learn more about Islam. So I feel for them as well.
One thing I really liked that was better last year and this year so far is more access to lectures and things like that, because everybody was doing them on Zoom. Like the nearest one to me, like I said, is a couple hours away, and they actually were doing like early morning Quran sessions or something, like before Sahur. There's no way I could have ever participated in that before, but because they were doing it on Zoom, I was actually able to experience that with them a little bit. And so that, I thought that was really cool. I mean, I think the internet helped us build like a broader community and get to participate in more communities.
That's really cool. I actually, not as a convert, but as just like a young Muslim looking for like better sources of better sources to like expand on my own spirituality, have also thought that like COVID really helped because there's so many more resources available online. And like, you know, I don't particular like, depending on who my local masjid is bringing to speak, I might not want to listen to that person's lecture, but now it's a lot easier to find someone who I actually want to listen to and like go in. It's not just like watching a YouTube video because there's other people there. So like it's not exactly the same as community building with in the place that you live, which would be like great, but you do like meet like-minded people who are maybe across the country, but hopefully you can try to form relationships with them.
Yeah, I think what is needed is kind of the next step, right? So when we get together in Zoom, like I'm not really making a special friendship with, you know, this little box over here on the screen. So, but it could be the start of something, right? So here we find like-minded people, we're listening to speakers that interest us. And so then what's the next step? How can we, you know, make more of a relationship with some of those people, you know, start, you know, maybe an informal chat session where it's just people talking instead of just listening to a lecture. Because when you're listening to a lecture, really, you're not really just socializing and making friends.
I agree. Do you have any ideas for how to make that happen? Because like, I know from the standpoint of like somebody who's like trying to create these programs, it's easier to get people to come to a lecture than it is to just come to like a hangout session, even though you'd think that like young people would want to hang out. Like people are hesitant to like start like do an online hangout with people that they don't actually know. But I think from Joe's comment, it would be great if we could all like be a little more open to that.
Well, it sounds like you're having a whole series of programs. You could throw a social into the mix, right? And maybe have like a theme to it, some kind of, let's talk about this tonight, or let's you know, let's do this thing together. You know, I don't know.
That's actually a really good idea, like a social discussion night. I will mark that down for ideas to put to the board. Mary Jo, do you guys have any ideas for programs or things that people in the community can do to be more welcoming on like a larger scale? Like I know like obviously being invited to someone's house is a great thing, but what can people do that's smaller than that? Like what if you're not in a position to invite, what if you're not the homeowner and you can't invite people over? What can people do to make converts feel more welcome?
I mean, there's a ton of things that come to mind. You know, on top of reminders. Remember, I spoke earlier about, you know, just reminding people of, you know, we have 12 imams. You know, we have multiple masumin, and there's always, it seems like there's always an event. There's always an occasion. So on top of reminders, on top of those reminders that may make a difference, believe it or not, you know, things like gifts, buying gifts. How many of your friends or your families, you know, members do you buy gifts for multiple times a year? Eid gifts, you know, birthday gifts, any type of gifts, you know, gifting, you know, invitations to weddings, invitations to birthday parties, invitations to lectures, invitations to iftar, or any type of just making them feel included, you know. And then another thing, you know, sponsoring. How about sponsoring a reaver? You know, sometimes I think people tend to forget, like, a lot of converts, especially Shias, right? We don't know the merits of going towards Karbala, right? We don't know the actual merits of, you know, visiting one of our imams. And I think I can only speak for myself that I've seen a lot of converts kind of let that go by, you know, because they don't necessarily have a parent or a brother or a family that's like, hey, we got to go this year, we got to go next year, we got to go 2 times this year. And a lot of times, just because we're already managing Islam ourselves, we kind of tend to forget, or maybe, I don't know, just not have someone reminding us, hey, you know, these are our duties, these are our responsibilities, these are things that we should do. Getting them involved in outreach programs, getting them involved in, and if you have a good intention of doing something good, and you want your friends to do good, for example, sometimes you invite your friends to do good and they're like, nah, I don't want to do it. But I guarantee you there's probably a convert out there that's willing to do some good. He or she just doesn't have the circle or the community or the resources to do so, you know. That's really it. Sorry, Sister Mary, go ahead.
I agree with Brother Yusuf as well. Just in inviting converts to things is really helpful, especially I know as a convert, at first I had trouble finding English resources and like, you know, masjids that had programs in English, like especially in Muharram, you know, things that were in English. So when people actually invited me to go to different masjids and programs with them that I didn't know about, that was really helpful for me. And I think that's something that anybody can do.
Okay, so the last thing that I wanted to ask before I start just looking at the comments and questions that are in the chat, I wanted to bring up the issue of like cultural legitimacy, I guess. It's like the idea that like born Muslims don't really realize what parts of their practice of Islam are really culture and what parts are actually religious. And I've heard that a lot of us tend to invalidate the culture of like reverts, especially like American reverts, where we're like, oh, well, American culture can't like be compatible with Islam, which is ridiculous. I wanted to ask about that and like just what do you guys have to, do you have any ideas about that? Anything to share about that?
I think it's hard to know, like you said, you know, if you, when you just don't know, like if you're born and raised in something, you don't always have a clear distinction between culture and religion. So an honest mistake is an honest mistake, right? So I think mainly it's just to not be so dogmatic in how you talk about Islam or how you represent Islam to converts and other people. Like some of the comments, you know, that people would make that just kind of strike me as in that vein is like, you know, telling someone that you can't sit with your legs crossed a certain way, or they have to, you know, little things like that. And they would be very adamant about it and very, you know, and just, you know, getting very upset about it. And maybe, you know, there's a hadith somewhere, maybe it's cultural, but is it like so important, right? Is it the most important thing that you need to, it's the only thing you said to that person all night long and you've never spoken to them before or after, but you need to, you know, correct their hijab or correct the way their leg is, you know, crossed, or you know, little things like that that can be really off-putting. And I'm sure it's not just to converts, but to anyone, you know, would feel that way. So I think more if you push it more as a dialogue instead of telling people this is what has to be done and this is the way, maybe just, you know, asking them a question instead, or maybe just letting it go. I mean, because I mean, none of us are perfect, right? And so is it worth bringing up something that you think that they're doing wrong? Is it even necessary? You know,
Yeah,
I think, you know, maybe if they want to know, you know, if it's a genuine, you know, I just don't know and I'm here to learn, but maybe we're wrong about it. Maybe some of the things we think are wrong are really okay and it's just culture.
yeah, there's that. And I wanted to comment on that and say that like as a community as a whole, I think that we're really bad about how we give nasihat, like how we give advice, and like the whole way that a lot of Muslims go about like amr bil maruf and nahy anil munkar. Like you like people are like totally inappropriate with it and don't realize when the way that you're giving a nasihat can be a total turnoff for someone to Islam, not just to converts, but to born Muslims as well. That like maybe if you don't know that person or if it's the first thing that you're gonna say to them, maybe don't. Like it might be better if you just don't.
I mean, it's a very thin line, right? It's a very thin line between, trying to enjoin good and forbid evil, and then calling someone out publicly or embarrassing someone. At the same time, we all are our due our respect and our dignity. Like I have to preserve the image or the dignity or the honor of my fellow brother or my fellow sister. And sometimes I think, we just tend to forget to either, give the person 72 excuses. Maybe this person doesn't know. Maybe this person's from a different background. Maybe, but maybe, okay, so maybe we're forgetting to do the 72 excuses, but then there's also part of what I said earlier. There's this backwards mentality that our culture is right just because we're Muslim. That doesn't necessarily mean it's true. You may be Muslim, you may be on the right path. That doesn't necessarily mean everything about your culture makes sense. There's some things about my personal culture as a Latino that I'm like, I don't know if I would, adopt that in my life. And I think with born Muslims, I don't know if this is the case, but it tends to seem like it is, that people blur the lines, right? Blur the lines between culture and religion. Or we're not supposed to do this because our culture says so, or we're not supposed to do this because our religion says so. And even the way that you say it makes a world of difference. You can recommend good in a good manner, in a good way, and in a healthy way. And of course, just like we have the story of Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein teaching the old man how to pray or how to make wudu, they were the best of examples. So we should take heed. We have the best of examples. Just like how Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wa alihi was to not just his companions, not just his loyal followers, not just his true Shia, but his enemies. He was rahmat al-alameen to everyone. He was welcoming to everyone. He made treaties with people that today you probably would think, like, I would never make a treaty with that individual. But Rasulullah did. And a lot of that comes from either lack of understanding Rasulullah's like true mission, being rahmat al-alameen, and then B, just not knowing how to handle people with other mentalities, other backgrounds, other faiths. Sometimes people, especially Muslims, think that everything is black and white, everything has to go my way or the highway, and that's not necessarily true.
Thank you for sharing that. I totally agree. I feel like a lot of us tend to do like a my way or the highway idea, and I find it even more frustrating when it comes from a Shia community, because we have these frustrations when we're interacting with like Sunnis at university and within MSAs and stuff. We have the frustration of being like, they think that their Islam is the only like valid version of it, and that there's like one version and everything is black and white, and that nothing can possibly be halal outside of the way that they think. And then we end up doing the same thing with our cultures, because we don't realize what part of deen is culture, or what part of our practice is culture and what part is actually deen. Something to be conscious about.
And I think it's a two-way street. I think converts can be guilty of this too. Like there's kind of the reverse effect where sometimes a convert will get get on the internet and tell somebody, that's not Islam, you shouldn't be doing that, or and it's their culture, right? And so I think we should all be more accepting of each other, right? And just, not trying to make one another conform to, little details about how we dress or what we eat, or, you know, I mean, I think I offended people one time for bringing, you know, something that wasn't a cultural dish, you know, because I can't make, you know, Iranian food or whatever, you know, but I mean, I think they were offended by that even, you know, it's like, sorry, this, you know, they thought it was not appropriate, but, you know, so, I mean, I just don't, you know, I think we can just be more accepting of people. I mean, Muslims are very, I mean, there's billions of us, right? So we can be very accepting of a wide range of differences. And I think, you know, for Shias, Muharram is one area where I think we could really grow in this, right? Muharram to me is one of the most culturally, I don't know, tinged isn't quite the right word, but like there's very strong cultural manifestations of Muharram out there, and they don't all speak to everyone in the same way. And people get very strong emotions about those. And, you know, it can be very off-putting to someone who, you know, doesn't come from the background of any of them and is trying to find a place to fit in, right? You know, you want to observe Muharram, and it's like, okay, well, this way is very alien to me. It doesn't make sense. And this other way, you know, it's very, people get very dogmatic about how they observe Muharram. And so I think it gets very hard for people who don't have that cultural background to find a place sometimes.
Yeah,
I think also as well, there's a lot of there's a lot of like lack of bridging the gaps, right? So sometimes we, because converts, we don't really know, we ourselves don't necessarily have a tradition, right? We don't wake up and like do all these marvelous things to our house because that's not what we grew up with, right? We know that the important parts, just making it through till dusk, you know, I mean till dawn, and making sure my prayers are valid, making sure my prayers are on time, and all of this stuff. I think there's a lot of space between the parts of the community, right? And kind of like how the sister said, like people will have this idea, okay, Ramadan, we're gonna have all the biryani, right? All the biryani. And then someone brings like, I don't know, something else, hamburgers, and they're upset. They're mad. They're like, well, this isn't what we do in our masjid or in our community or in our tradition. Not understanding that not everyone comes from that background, not understanding that people have their own way, people have new ways, and not necessarily meaning it's wrong, it's their way. And some of that also has to do with, you know, the lack of really integrating, you know, like sometimes for myself, I've experienced converts being cornered into marrying other converts, right? And so now it's two people that don't necessarily have the same tradition as the community. And now it's two people showing up, and it's two people going against the grain. And who's to blame them? Because one is Puerto Rican, one is from Ghana or something. And they don't have the traditions that you may have where in your background, right? And I think that is a major problem that has to be addressed, you know, thinking that every convert has to marry a convert, or thinking that every convert's way is the wrong way, or thinking that the convert, his Ramadan or his Islam is different from my Islam or my Ramadan or my fast. There's no difference. There's no difference. We just need to learn how to become one ummah, not just say we're one ummah, but work on unity, like actually promoting brotherhood, sisterhood, marrying one another. Like, okay, fine, the brother isn't married or the sister isn't married, let's find a pious person for that person to marry within the community, so that he doesn't or she doesn't have to run to another community or another convert, or God forbid somebody outside of Islam, which tends to happen all the time. Things like that, I think, would really aid converts, in my opinion.
Well, I wanted to make a comment to say just that I hope that inshallah, with like, as like the community who's my age starts to come into our own and we start forming our own households and stuff, I think I would hope that, especially for people like you, Joe, who are like closer to my age, that we would have more of these like it would be easier to engage in community building and inviting people over to your house and inviting them into your inner friend circle, especially as as the first generation born to immigrants here. We speak English as our first language. It would be a lot easier for us to have people come over, whereas maybe for our parents' generation and the immigrant generation, you know, when they're hosting a gathering, they also want to relax and they want to speak in the tongue that all their family and friends speak. And that's also a thing that in our communities, like in our parents' generation, they tend to be a lot more I don't want to say cliquey, but they tend to stick to their own, even within other Muslims. Like the Iranians hang out with the Iranians and the Pakistanis stay with Pakistanis. But with our generation, there's more mixing, and hopefully that extends to converts who are entering the faith as well. If you guys have any last questions, we are technically, this program was going to end at 7:45. It's 7:45 now, so I'm just going to look really quickly at the chat and see if there's any questions or comments that I should read out. Somebody mentioned using breakout rooms to foster discussions that go past just a lecture. I think that is a good idea, and we're going to be trying to do that for a couple of our events. Hidayah Nawi asked, how do you think we can be most supportive to our convert brothers and sisters right now in light of COVID and loneliness? Do you guys have anything?
I think it's a good step, right? I mean, I think just getting them involved in whatever it is you're doing, whether it's remote or in person.
Getting us involved, for sure. Getting us involved any way you can, any and every way you can.
And I think hopefully if you have their contact information, just reaching out saying Ramadan Mubarak or, Eid Mubarak, whatever, they don't have all their family calling them and everything. So I think just letting them know you're thinking about them is great.
Okay. Well, most of the questions seem to be, let me read this last one. Someone commented that those who own or stay up at the Masjid should know that we're in a pluralistic society and quote unquote others will join. So they should educate their constituents on the cultural diversity of their members. I think that's, yeah, but.
Yeah, one thing I would say about that is, one question that I often ask myself is would I ever feel comfortable bringing my parents to this place? And, honestly, the Masjid, the answer is almost always no way. They would freak out. They would be really uncomfortable. They would be, and so I always like to think about what would make my parents comfortable here, and part of it is language, but part of it is gender separation. I think that would be an issue for my family, but a lot of it are just a lot of the little things we've been talking about tonight, about how either they don't talk to you at all, or they ask you really weird questions and don't treat you like a normal person. Those kind of things. Churches, I mean, a lot of you probably never been to a church. I don't know, but churches do a much better job about that sort of thing, where anybody could walk through their door, and it's like they have a system in place for whoever's new to feel welcome. It's like they have a procedure, and they may vary a little bit from church to church, but they have a plan.
People convert to Christianity all the time and nobody calls them converts. They're just Christians.
Yeah. They don't have a specific, they're not labeled as anything other than Christian.
That's a good point.
And yet I have a friend who converted, 30 some plus years and studied at Hausa and all this stuff, and she's still a convert, not a Muslim, right? To almost everybody who interacts with her. I mean, when does the convert label no longer apply? And the answer to many people is never. It's always, you're always this other. You're never just part of the community.
Right.
And then look at great, I didn't mean to cut you off, I'm sorry, but look at great companions, a lot, Abu Dhar al-Ghafari, many companions were converts themselves, and we don't remember them being companions. I mean, converts. We don't remember them for being converts. We remember them for their achievements, for their loyalty to the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. It's not, today the climate is much different. You know, that's Joe the convert, Yusuf the convert. You know, there's and we're more than our conversion stories. We're more than what we are offering today, for example. We're telling you guys, or we're telling the community how to better, and this is a necessity. You know, I like this. It's a good idea, you know, to welcome us better. But it's so much more than that. You know, we converts are Muslims. A lot of us identify as Muslims before our own background. You know, I myself identify as Shia before I identify as Latino or American or anything else. And I think I don't even consider myself a convert that often, because I've been Muslim for 10 years, you know, and before that I studied Islam. And at what point am I just a convert, right? The convert with his conversion story, the convert that could give you better convert relations. But I don't know. I think there's a lot that we can all learn from one another. There's a lot that needs to be bridged between us. There's a lot that's missing, but there's also a lot that's there too. You know, there's people that, like this, for example, this is a platform where we can talk about, at least freely, you know, okay, this is where the community went wrong. This is where the community kind of hurt me or kind of swayed me away from the masjid. So these things, these programs like this, you know, platforms like this, giving us a voice, not just on convert night, but like every night, you know, and invite us, you know, have us part of programs, have us part of your homes, have us part of your family. You know, everyone has that cousin that's not a cousin. You know, everyone has that that brother or sister that's not a sister. You know, we can be that. You know, sometimes we can be that better than people from the community, in my opinion. Allahu Alam, of course.
Oh, that was super eye-opening. I've never thought to myself about like the issue of referring to converts as converts, but obviously, like hearing it now, it's like, yeah, like it's otherizing. And like it's one thing, somebody commented that they seem to like convert is a strong part of their identity, and that's fine too. But it definitely, like, we do need to be conscious of like when someone's been a Muslim for this long, even if they've only been a Muslim for a year or less, like treat them like a Muslim, don't treat them like a separate entity, and take that into all of your interactions with them when they're at the mosque. Don't otherize people, like try to be as welcoming as you can. I'm really grateful to all of you for being on our panel tonight. I hope that going forward, the community here has learned something from this, especially my generation. I hope that we can be better when it comes to our, when it comes to like helping build a sense of community for the converts in our community. Thank you again. And I hope you guys attend some of our other events and comment and let us know if we're doing things right. I think that's all for our questions. Everybody, please look at our Instagram page, or I think if you follow IEC on Telegram, we also advertise our stuff there. But we'll be doing programs all month, and we have a couple different like types of programs. We have a few that will be like repetitive and a few like special lectures and stuff that are coming up. I highly recommend one of my college professors from University of Maryland, Ahmed Karam Mustafa, who's an expert in Sufism, will be giving a lecture in not this weekend, next weekend. Definitely tune into that. And we have a couple lectures coming up this weekend. Thank you everyone for attending. Thank you again to our panel, Diana, Mary, and Joe. Can't thank you guys enough for doing this. Assalamu alaikum, guys.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much.
Ramadan Kareem, everybody.
Hetty, that was like such a great event. 10 out of 10.
Thank you. Thank the panelists. I didn't feel like I was doing any work.
No, they did. I mean, thank you all for joining us. That was so crazy awesome. I learned so much. I'm so ashamed of myself because I feel like everyone is like, oh, that happens. Other people do those things, but not me. And maybe I'm not as infallible as I think I am.
No,
so.
I feel like, yeah, I'm
you.
like, oh wow, like the referring to people as converts thing, I was like, oh my God, like I'm a person who's like so with it, with like not using it, like with microaggressions against minorities, and then I'm like, oh my God, this is in itself a microaggression.
Wow. Thank you guys so much. I know it's not easy to like voice all of these things because it must come from a place of such vulnerability. So I really appreciate you guys sharing all of that with us. And we should let everybody go because everyone's hungry. So
Oh yeah, everybody get to your iftar. Diana, I hope you enjoy your iftar in a couple hours.
Yeah, I have to wait a few more hours.
Oh no.
She's in Colorado.
Well, thank you for joining us.